Good evening, everybody. This is Not Sky with PoliticsNY. I am Alex Mitchell, and welcome to Schneps Media's rapid fire debate for New York City's 9th Council District of Central Harlem, Morningside Heights, the Upper West Side, and East Harlem. I'm joined now with my co-host, my Andy Richter, and my Conan O'Brien, Stephen Witt, editor-in-chief of PoliticsNY, and of course, all of our esteemed candidates. There might be some joining in. The internet can be tricky, especially post-pandemic, but right now we are joined by Keith Taylor, Ruth McDaniels, Sheba Simpson, Kristin R. Jordan, Billy Council, Mario Rosser, Joshua Clennon. Everybody, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Doing well, thank you.
Amazing.
So I would like to just jump right into this, and we want to hear from all of you in what we call an elevator pitch introduction. So take 45 seconds to just say something about yourself, why you're running for city council, really talk about anything you want. And I'm just going in the order of my screen right here. There's no preferences. Let's start with Keith.
Hi, my name is Dr. Keith Taylor. For the past 30 years, from caseworker to commissioner, I've been fighting to address the systemic problems facing the Harlem community, such as unifying families as a caseworker at Harlem Dow and Children's Services, as a New York City police officer fighting police corruption as internal affairs supervisor, and a correction department commissioner reforming the fight against violence behind Rikers Island's walls. I'm running to fight against police injustice through criminal justice reform, to address systemic public health inequities, and to discontinue the practice of oversaturating Harlem with unneeded substance abuse and other related services. I'm fighting for COVID-19 equity for Harlem in terms of testing, treatment, and vaccinations. And I'm running to preserve Harlem's historical legacy as a place known for its cultural, artistic, and architectural impact to the rest of the world. Thank you.
Ruth, you're next. You're muted.
I'm Ruth McDaniels, and I'm a retired city employee, civil servant for 25 years. I have 5 children. I am an advocate for returning citizens as well as disenfranchised residents of Harlem. I'm a tenant association president. I also sit on the precinct council as the vice president of the 32nd Precinct Council. I'm involved in a lot of community activities and charity work in my neighborhood. I have 4 children, 7 grandchildren, and I'm running because I'm sick and tired of the status quo, doing whatever they want, not giving anything back to the local residents.
Thank you. Sheba.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sheba Simpson, and I am a candidate for New York City Council for District 9. And the reason I'm running, one, it's a long time promise I made to myself as a 15-year-old when I saw my community being decimated by the crack epidemic, as well as the beginning of mass incarceration. I am a longtime Harlemite, as well as a educator for over 25 years. My first license is special education. And I'm also running because we in District 9 are facing a myriad of crises: food insecurity, over-policing, the oversaturation of substance abuse treatment centers, and just the overall quality of life has declined significantly over the last decade. Okay. And I believe that I have the ability to work with a diverse population to bring our community back and to help it thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen.
Hi, my name is Kristen Richardson Jordan. I am on a mission to disrupt District 9 with radical love. What that looks like and means is service to the community. I am an organizer, an activist, and author. I've been a teacher for the past 10 years. I started this race in 2019 because I really felt called to serve. And my platform spells out Harlem. So the H stands for holding police accountable and abolition. The A is actually affordable housing, housing as a human right. R is redistribution of wealth and resources. L is living longer. It is a care package for our Harlem seniors, as well as general health care, community care, and violence intervention. E is education for all and environmental justice. And M is meaningful change. If I win, I will be the first out person in this seat. I also, because we have never had a Black queer woman on the New York City Council, would be the first Black queer woman to run and win a New York City Council seat from any district. But
Thank
aside
you, Kristen.
from,
We're going to have to move it on. We have too many people, but we will go forward.
Billy, you're next.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. My name is Billy Council. I'm a former high school athletic director, basketball coach, entrepreneur. I'm also a director of a local business here in Harlem, and I run a nonprofit organization. I'm a service to my community. I have been involved with public service all my life. I'm a product of this environment and this community. I grew up here, and I'm here to bridge the gap between the old and new, the gentrifiers and all the old timers in Harlem. So that's me, Billy Council.
Mario.
What's up, New York One? My name is Mario Rosser, and I grew up actually coming home to eviction notices on my front door. Ever since then, my mission has been to expand opportunity to everyone. And I've done that as a tech business manager, as a nonprofit leader, and as a community builder. I'm running for city council, number one, to keep Harlemites in our homes, to make sure we invest in our youth programs and public schools in our neighborhood, and to make sure we secure real safety that Harlem deserves for everyone. Thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to this conversation.
Joshua.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Joshua Clinton. I'm a housing activist, small business owner, and leader on Community Board 10, where I serve as treasurer and chair of its district needs task force. I'm running for city council in District 9 to bring bold, transformative change to the village of Harlem. The challenges facing our community are not talking points for me. They're my lived experiences, growing up in poor housing conditions, coming home from school to eviction notices on my door, and losing my father at a young age to gun violence. Seeing my neighbors not afford to live in our community, not afford to be able to rent in a community that we fought so long and so hard to save, led me to get involved in community activism and affordable housing, where I work currently making sure that low-income housing cooperatives in our community stay solvent, and also making sure that working class residents can maintain equity and generational wealth for their families. My personal and professional experience in affordable housing and working with the city's budget and land use process uniquely qualify me to serve as the next city council member for the 9th district.
Thank you very much. Sorry about that. Just the timekeeper. Who do we have? Is that everybody?
We have, I believe, I'm sorry, we have someone actually in the waiting room that I'm trying to figure this out now. Isn't technology a great thing?
So,
I'm also here too.
oh, all right. Well, I'm sorry. Then Sheba, please.
No, actually, we got this all mixed up here. So
Yeah.
I don't know what happened with the technical pieces. This is William Allen.
Okay, so William Allen, please introduce yourself and give us an elevator pitch.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having all of us. Happy to be here today. I started my public career probably around 10 years old. When I was in my teens, I became the first teenager appointed to a community board in the history of the city. And before I turned 21, I was appointed trustee of a community school district, making me the youngest trustee of any school district in the state. I've had, most of my life has been about public service and community service, whether I were in high school and college, where I was able to lead my peers, being a graduate student rep on the board of trustees of City University, and truly being a nonprofit leader. And what a nonprofit leader is, someone who's been an executive director of an agency and manage a budget and supervise the staff. I did that for housing organizations. I did that in public health. I did that in education. I'm proud to say that I've helped to, since my school board days, I've helped to also create some other options for parents in Harlem in terms of charter schools. One is the Zula Walker Charter School at Canaan Baptist Church, and the other is Harlem Hebrew, right across the street from my home on 117th and Adam Powell Jr. Boulevard.
Thank you. We just have to close up because we have a lot. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Athena, we are so sorry for the technical difficulty of not being able to get you in here sooner.
No problem. I've been on since 5, but I'm patient. Of course, I'm also a multitasker. I'm actually picking up my daughter from school right now. As a single mom, multitasking doesn't stop. But it's a pleasure to be here. I am a proud Democrat and a longtime community organizer and advocate here in Harlem. I've been serving as the director of the Manhattan Borough President's Office on 125th Street for the past 7 years. I am a daughter of New York City public housing, NYCHA, someone who was raised in a family who succumbed to both mental illness and substance abuse. And because of that, it's instilled a deep sense of commitment and service for the community. I'm uniquely qualified to go to City Hall because unlike my wonderful colleagues here, I have policy, budget, and constituent services experience, as well as land use experience. And I've been helping over 10,000 constituents through my storefront office. But I've also been an executive director in the nonprofit sector as well. And I look forward to today's discussion.
Thank you.
And I think it is just about time for us to get into that discussion. And for everybody who has just joined, we're again asking, obviously, there's a lot of you. We would like you to keep your responses between 1 to 2 minutes, just so we could cover as much ground as possible. Now, earlier this week, there was what I would call very good news and hopes that New York City will be reopening ahead of schedule. It appears that on May 17th, 24-hour subway service is coming back, and it looks like by May 19th, much of, if not all of the city's normalcy will be returning. Now, for District 9, what are some of the biggest priorities during reopening and coming out of the pandemic? Now, for order, we're just going to go in reverse of what we just did. So we're going to start with you, Athena.
Definitely. So economic recovery has been the top issue in my platform. I've been focused on the need for equitable distribution of federal funds, certainly the creation of good paying jobs and a living wage, support for small businesses and MWBEs with a real focus on green and tech jobs. I've been focused on vocational training and apprenticeships. I believe our young people need training, but also financial literacy. And we can't have any of the recovery efforts taking place without making sure that the pillars of our community are being addressed. The pillars, I mean housing and development, that we must make sure protections are in place for families. And that's a cornerstone of my economic recovery platform.
Thank you.
William.
Thank you very much. I think my priority would be to make sure that all of our folks in the district are secure in their housing. Right now, we're very concerned about what's going to happen at the housing court, and we want to ensure that that process runs smoothly for those residents, as well as for small property owners. We want to make sure that our community won't be wreaked havoc because of the pandemic and how it impacts on housing. But we're also concerned in terms of how the post period is going to affect those small businesses, making sure that they can also stay in place and get the necessary resources so they can continue to strive in our community. It will become an opportunity for all of us to begin to look at what kind of new society that we want to live in, what should be that direction, and who should be at the table to ensure that everybody has equity and justice.
Thank you.
Joshua.
First and foremost, we have to open our senior centers. Our seniors have been cooped up in the house for this entire pandemic. A lot of them in isolation, and we need to open our senior centers, make sure that our seniors have a place that they can go to get the services, the care that they need, and just the interaction with their neighbors, get that personal touch again so that they can really enjoy their lives and live with some vibrancy. In addition to that, we need to give robust support and guidance to our small businesses to make sure that they can reopen in a way that's safe for themselves, their workers, and also for their customers, their patrons. We also need to expand healthcare for our workers in the gig economy. A lot for our artists who will be returning, performing in venues and things of that nature. We need to make sure that they are protected, that they have health coverage. We need to expand the New York City CARES Act to ensure that everyone in our city can have access to healthcare, preventative healthcare, and get vaccinated.
Thank you.
Mario.
Thank you all. To me, the answer to that is clear. People are struggling to even maintain their apartments right now in Harlem. That's going to be a crisis that continues and goes into a domino effect for at least the next year. We have to make sure that we use this office to do everything we can across the board to preserve affordable housing, to get tenants the support they need. And yeah, also we need to make sure that our small building owners in Harlem, many of whom represent the Black wealth that we have in the neighborhood, that they are okay too. So we have to do everything we can on the local level and through this office to make sure that we keep people in Harlem, because if you keep the people in Harlem, you keep the culture in Harlem. It's simple as that. Beyond that, in January of 2022, what I see as being an issue is making sure that we secure a strong future for our kids. They've been through so much over the past 2 years. They haven't been in school. They've been in school irregularly. We need to make sure we're using these economic recovery funds to reopen these youth programs and youth centers, make sure these kids have things to do and getting them off the street, and making sure that every kid in Harlem is expected to have a great future, not just as an exception.
Billy.
Hi, thank you. We have to, one of the things that we have to do, we have to create awareness for different industries to help rebuild our local economy. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. We have to work on our small businesses to make sure that they have the proper resources and opportunities to continue to. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're coming through on my end.
Yeah.
Steve's there.
Oh, okay. No, I just hear somebody else talking. I'm sorry. And also we have to, work on youth development. Our community, our young people are struggling with trying to, figure out what are they going to do in the future. We have to give them opportunities and resources. We gotta put a lot of time and effort into making our community safe. During COVID, we have been impacted by a lot of violence in NYCHA and out of NYCHA. So we got to make sure that our whole community feels safe. We got to make sure that our community boards are understanding the needs of our tenants. We got to make sure that our police are servicing our community the proper way.
Kristen.
So first, I would address the housing crisis, which was a crisis even before COVID, but certainly COVID has exacerbated the problem. And we have a moratorium on evictions, and then the moratorium was extended, but we haven't yet done rent forgiveness or rent cancellation in a way that would actually prevent people from being evicted from their homes. So that's what I would prioritize first. Aside from that, everything that's on my platform relates to community building. And I would say that we need to rebuild our collective vision and our connection to one another. COVID has kept a lot of us really separated and really isolated. So as an organizer, I would be able to do that movement work of pulling the community together. One of the things I'm proud about with my campaign is that we are leading in district donations, leading in overall donations, and leading in volunteers and grassroots power, because we are about putting community and people first. And any solution as we come out of COVID is going to need that.
Thank you. Sheba.
Thank you for the question. For me, making sure that everyone stays in their homes is a priority for me. The moratorium is until August 31st. However, we still have people who are unemployed, and the money that they are receiving both from the state and from the city, as well as from the federal government, is not enough, and it's not sustainable. We need to make sure that the small businesses get protection. And I've been pushing this. I'm one of the only candidates that speak about the Small Business Job Survival Act, which should have been signed off by the City Council over a decade ago, which would give small businesses protection in regards to being extorted, giving month-to-month leases as long-term leases that will help them employ the hard to employ our formerly incarcerated. So we need to look at that, but we also need to make sure that our seniors are taken care of and they are given the opportunity to be given the resources and services that they justly deserve. And then we need to talk
Thank
about—
you, Sheba. Sorry, we're
It's
not trying to
okay.
cut anyone off. We just want to
It's
keep moving.
fine.
Ruth. Muted.
First thing that I will be doing when I get into city council is addressing the YMCA and why all the local activities in my community have been shut down. They open up in other communities. Why not here in Harlem? Our children, our seniors, all of them participate in activities, social activities, things that help our mental health. I will be addressing the mental health issues. I will be addressing housing issues. I address housing issues right now on a regular because people are still challenged with tenant associations and landlords not being able to sustain themselves with their rent. There's also the issue of unnecessary violence. I say unnecessary, but clearly it's necessary for those people out there doing the shooting. But those are all mental health issues that we have to get in front of. And my intention is to get in front of them and look them dead in the eye and figure out why this is the breakdown of communication, why that's the outcome to every response. Our children have to have graduation. There are no graduations. That kills their momentum. We've got to get our energy back, get our stride back, get these kids involved in things. That's my first thing.
Oh, thank you, Ruth. And Keith.
Yes, I think that this is really an opportunity for us to look at not only addressing the issues that we are dealing with currently, but especially in Harlem, dealing with the systemic issues that the community faced long before this pandemic was known. For instance, in schools, we have to open them back up. We have to do them in a way that is based on the evidence and the facts. As the vaccines become available, as children get vaccinated, but they're going to have to make up for the academic loss that they've suffered from as a result of 18 months of off and on online learning. But this is also an opportunity to address the systemic issues of poor educational outcomes in our community. So that is just one example of many different ways in which we can really rethink how Harlem is treated by city government through the position of city council. Employment, using green jobs, not only to get our individuals employed in this community, but also clean up the environment in the process. Dual, innovative ways of dealing with multiple types of problems that exist. I know I'm out of time, but that's what I'm looking at as city council member, getting solutions that are innovative, that are cost effective, and that are accountable to the people.
Keith, thank you not only for acknowledging our time, but keeping it concise. I believe Steve now has a question for everybody when he unmutes.
I want to bring things to education, and I want a three-pronged question. One, the UFT it's been alleged they made it kind of hard with remote learning, and I'd like to know your feelings about school choice in charter schools and allowing parents to have more choice. Two, I'd like to know about the gifted and talented program, if you think that it should be extended to local public schools. And three, do you think the specialized high school entrance exam should continue or be banned for other criteria? So it's all education related.
Steve, I'd also like to throw on one final one. Your thoughts on no more snow days?
Right, but I'm really interested in the charter school and the gifted and talented SAT.
Of course, but snow days too.
Okay.
How do you want to do this as far as an order goes?
You pick it, Alex.
Okay, again, I'm just going with on my screen. I'm trying to make it as fair as possible. Let's start with Mario.
Y'all asked the right person first, because I'm gonna get on you guys about asking 5 questions in one. But
yeah,
look, number one, our kids have been through so much, and this is going to be the number one focus, as I said earlier. In terms of the gifted and talented program, I support expanding that to more schools in our neighborhood, right? They're not perfect, and we need to continue to use evidence-based methods to make them relevant for Harlem, and that includes culturally relevant curriculum in our Harlem schools. But I do support those programs. In terms of charter schools versus public schools, look, the parents I talk to in Harlem want their kids educated. Most don't really care whether it's a public school or charter school. I personally believe that you cannot have a strong city without a strong public education system. And I'm going to prioritize doing everything I can to make sure our public schools get the funding they need. And sometimes that's not always happening because of funds going to some of our charter schools, which aren't always held as accountable as they need to be. So I support a strong public education system. But at the end of the day, parents in Harlem want their kids to learn and have great futures. In terms of the SHIS Act, I actually support it being eliminated because it has consistently biased the kids who live in my neighborhood from being able to go to some schools with great resources. And that's not right. And I think we need to make sure we have more holistic assessment of who's getting able to go to schools with all this money and all these programs. And so I think that's a key part about it. So I support that. All right, number 6. In terms of snow days, personally, I want kids to be able to have snow days, right? That's what I grew up with. And I don't think that we necessarily need to continue that, but that's my personal opinion. If I'm being really honest with you, I want my kids to be able to have snow days just like I did.
Thank you, Mario.
Yep.
And next, let's go to William.
Thank you very much. First of all, we need to change the school calendar. Right now, we operate out of a calendar that was meant for farming families. And I think that we've passed that by 150 years. And we need to begin to look at the change of this calendar. Like other European nations in Asia, they have changed their calendars to meet the changing economy and the changing way in which we educate our community and our young people. That needs to be changed. I think I'm probably the only one here other than Sheba who's actually been in education. I'm a former school board president of District 5 School, which was 27 schools before I turned 21 years old. I had about 27 principals reporting to me and my colleagues on the board. I served 8 years as chairman of Zazula Walker Charter School at Canaan Baptist Church, and I'm a co-founder of Harlem Hebrew Charter School. What's missing from the conversation of education in our community is that we're not allowing parents and other consumers to be at the table. I'm not going to be a city council person and act like I'm a scientist and I know it all. Let's bring parents into discussion. Let charter school parents talk to regular public school parents and parochial. We need to have a real education discussion about what is next. But we got to make sure that folks at the table and that elected officials are not meant to be merely leaders. They're meant to be representatives. And so that's what's really hurting us.
Thank you. And now let's go to Sheba.
So I'm going to piggyback on my colleague, William. I never had to reimagine schools. The pandemic exposed everything that we knew what was wrong with the education system in this country. We have a optimum time right now to change not only the school calendar, but how we interact with our families that we service, because we be in public school, an educator, I am a service provider. And so we need to work around our parents' schedules and the needs of our students. That is the first thing we need to do. We need to reimagine that all of our students are capable of greatness and give the schools the funding, especially the schools in our community that has been underserved and marginalized for generations. That's the first thing we need to do. Then we need to also look at the gifted and talented. A lot of times our children are not seen for their unique abilities, and we need to look generously at our kids' abilities to do great things based on their innate abilities. Then we need to also look at snow days. Snow days made it the best time to be a kid going to school. But then we want to look at the Shizat. The Shizat as a person who was a direct I was a direct facilitator in the program, and we need to give more opportunities to students who look like me because they are brilliant and they're not given the opportunities to sit in those specialized high schools that they should be.
Thank you, Sheba. And now Athena.
Yes, so I am a longtime educator. I want to correct my colleague William. He's not the only educator. I've been a professor at the CUNY level as well as in private settings at NYU, but also to young children in after-school programs around the city. I think education is so critical. As the Borough President's Director in Harlem, I have worked ongoing on this issue of charter schools. We have definitely spoke out against the equity issues that we think are still a problem, especially within Community District 5, CEC 5 in Central Harlem. We do believe that overcrowding in many of the facilities still remains to be an issue, that there should be quality for all. So what happens in the public school system should be happening in the charter and other private settings as well. Our kids deserve access to gifted and talented programs no matter where you are. I was raised in public schools, but I also went to boarding school. So I have had the experience of being in both settings, and I value both. I also have worked as an advocate around curriculum and making sure that it's culturally responsive. I've worked with our superintendent currently, Donica Rux, in Harlem, as well as with our CECs and our school leadership teams. I currently work with them as the Borough President's staff, appointing members to the CEC, as well as to the community boards, and work with the Education, Youth, and Libraries Committee. Those are all critical in making sure that decisions reflect the needs of the community. I also am a first generation college student, so having college access and starting that in the early years so that kids have a pipeline to success is critical, and I will continue to be an advocate for community learning.
Thank you, Athena. Joshua.
Yeah, I also push back on the educate. Although I'm not a teacher. I don't work in public schools or for a charter school. Education is probably the most important aspect of the work that I do, educating tenants on their rights, educating homeowners on how to secure their assets, how to, establish wills, how to make sure that they maintain generational wealth in their families. And unlike other candidates, I actually went to school right here in our district, public school, graduated from Frederick Douglass Academy. So I intuitively know that, our school system is broken. And our schools, particularly in our district, are lacking funding to compete with other schools. So when you look at the specialized high school exam, it's not a matter of the exam itself, it's a matter of preparation. Because any student can pass an exam when they have the preparation for that exam. When there's not equal access to preparation for the exam, then we need to scrap the exam altogether, or make sure that there's equitable access to test prep, and that we start at a young age for students throughout our city. In addition to that, regarding charter schools, parents have the right to send their kids to whatever school that they want to, right? If a charter school can get it done for you, that's fantastic. But my focus is making sure that public funds are utilized efficiently and effectively. We've seen a lot of situations in our city where public education funds have been misused by charters. We need to provide greater transparency and accountability and make sure that public funds are going to the schools in most need.
Joshua, thank you. Now, Billy.
Well, good questions. First of all, going to public school here in District 9 has always been a challenge. You know, I grew up going to public school here, and from there I went on. Before it was charter school, I went to Catholic school here in District 9, and you could see the difference, right? But I also believe that, you know, it starts at home. I also believe that the curriculum needs to change. I also believe that the calendar, and I do agree with my two colleagues about the calendar change. And the other thing is, when you talk about education, you know, I'm also been in education, you know, half of my life as an athletic director, and I have to deal with a lot of our young men and young ladies who have been trying to get to specialized high schools. I think that, you know, that needs to stop also, right? Because you know, one of the things about our kids that, you know, a lot of our kids have learning disabilities, and taking those standardized tests is hard, right? So we have to find a way to, you know, have other resources to make sure that they get into those schools. You know, when we look at holistically, when we look at our education system, from public school to charter school to private school to, you know, they're all different, right? But our kids need to learn the same way. Our kids need to be challenged, and our kids need to be pushed, right? But we also have to make sure that we have educators there that are there to teach and help and guide. You know, when it comes down to the snow days, you know, I want our kids to be kids. And I think it's really important that, you know, we keep those snow days so they can enjoy being young people.
Thank you, Billy. Kristen.
So I've been a teacher for the past 10 years, and I have a lot to say about education. I know I have 45 seconds, so I'll keep it short. My biggest thing is that we are in 2 tiers. We have a 2-tier education system. It is very much that it is very biased. It is very much built on and supporting white supremacy. Remote learning has shown us more how the disparity exists. Charter schools are part of the 2-tier. They double dip in funds, and they filter out the students. Gifted and talented is part of the 2 tiers. The specialized high school test is part of the 2 tiers. We need to eliminate the 2 tiers of education. What I call for is an expansion of what's called a community school model. It would involve extra funding to public schools to make the schools a one-stop shop for kids and their families.
Kristen, thank you. Ruth.
I'm sorry. As a graduate of public school in this community, as well as private school in this community, and having children that's going to school in this community and grandchildren who are currently in school in this community, I've never been an advocate for charter schools. I've worked in the school system when charter schools and public schools are both in the same building, and we're talking about resources. It all boils down to money. If the money is given to the Board of Education the same way it's given to the charter, the children will produce. The teachers will cause the children to produce. This is a money factor. District 5 has been historically the worst district academically, and it's been done for specific reasons, because they know, I know, and a lot of other people know that when you have poor education, it perpetuates poverty, and poverty perpetuates incarceration, and they keep this rail running. And that's how they displace the majority of my community, through incarceration and poor education. So when we talk about setting a tone academically, we have to talk about making sure that there are things in place structurally to keep the parents in tune so that they can be the strong parents that they need to be when the children come home, as well as making sure as the school system stakeholders are committed to the children. A lot of these schools aren't committed to the children. It's numbers. It's just the numbers. And they track our children from 5th grade as to who's going to prison based on math scores from 5th grade. We have to look at those things. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Ruth. No, it's perfectly okay. Keith.
Yeah, I am a product. I'm a 3rd generation public school and CUNY grad. My grandmother graduated from Wiley High School in 1929. My father went to, and his brother went to Brooklyn Tech as young men. And so this idea that these schools are not providing the access that they previously had is true. The most recent applicants getting into the specialized high schools in New York City, I think it was 8 or 9 African Americans out of 1,600, which is ridiculous. We can't afford that level of inequity. As far as my background in education, my doctorate from Columbia, my FEMA training municipalities nationwide about emergency management, and I've been teaching at the college level since 1993, as well as founding a STEM school in the Bronx. So education is something that is very important to me. It's something that I want to see changed in Harlem, break this dysfunction, start with literacy. It's a social justice issue, and it's a determinant of economic security, health and mental health and democracy. So we have to focus on making sure that our teachers have all the skills they need to teach evidence-based reading instruction. That would be the thing that I'd focus on. The second thing, gifted and talented should be equitable, accessible to all students. Should not be a way to limit the numbers of individuals coming from certain communities into specialized high school. The test, high stakes test, we know that's not the best way to ensure equitable access for everyone in the community. So we got to expand the uses, the things that are used to measure how individuals get into these schools. It cannot simply be one high stakes test. No more snow days. I was going to say, my son's sad about it, but I like the idea of school continuing even if the weather does not permit.
So Steve, do you have any more very important questions that we should ask, or are we allowed to start asking the fun and nice things now? Hang on, you're muted. Still muted.
All right, I'm unmuted now. It's not a question for me. I'm looking online. I think this is kind of a good question. It's from Nikilia from New Jersey, I think, or NJ. The question is, the crime rate and murder rate has risen since the pandemic hit New York. How do you work with the police department to try to nip it in the bud, or at least try to curb it? What do you think the police should be doing more or less of? And do you think that you are a candidate that can help bridge the gap between your community?
Okay, we know that this is going to be challenging, but in the efforts of time, please try to keep your responses to only 1 minute. Keith, because you went last, kick us off.
And I'm sorry because we want fun, but good question, I think.
Hello?
I agree with you.
All right.
Okay, so I've spent my professional career in law enforcement, public safety. I was a commissioner for the Department of Correction, working on reducing violence within Rikers. Before that, I spent 23 years in various capacities within the NYPD. I have a unique perspective and experience that will allow me to really get at the root causes and problems that exist between police actions and behavior and the community. I'm hoping you guys still hear me.
Yes, we do.
Okay, because Alex, you're frozen. So this experience, this level of training, it's why I teach at John Jay College as a professor for young people that are interested in careers in law enforcement. We need to certainly hold them accountable, but we also need to support them. And we can do both. We certainly, as a community, have suffered a lot because of police abuse, but we also need them in order to have things like a business community and to have safe routes for schools and so on. So you know what I'm saying.
Thank you. And Athena.
Yes, this issue has been so critical. I just organized a march last week. I invited all of the District 9 candidates, as well as my colleagues in government and in the community, to come together to address this issue. We were outraged by what's happening at the national level as well as in New York City. I currently work with the NYBT precincts, their police community councils in Council 28. I have been advocating around public safety and sort of gun violence prevention, as well as addressing crimes. I organized a second march in light of the recent uptick in violence that took place in East Harlem, and that just happened last weekend. I will continue working on community-based strategies. We recently released a police reform toolkit working in collaboration with the Manhattan Borough President's Office, and I was a key staffer who was in part in charge of that initiative. I also have been working ongoing with restorative justice groups and violence interrupters, such as Guns Down, Life Up, Harlem Mothers Save, certainly East Harlem Save, and Street Corner Resources. Those are all well-known organizations that.
Okay. Thank you, Kristen.
So at the risk of losing your vote, I'm going to challenge the premise of the question because I don't think the issue is police-community relations as much as I think it's an issue of power and power imbalance and power dynamics. We do not have accountability for the police. And we have seen in history and currently that the police are unable to hold themselves accountable. So I am calling for an elected civilian review board, would have firing and suspension power over the local police. I am also calling for the ability to rework funds away from police to other services that would actually prevent crimes and prevent harm before they happen. The reason why I say this is because we continue to go down a cycle of violence where we have interpersonal violence in the community, and then we respond with state violence, and that is not solving the problem. So what we need to do is increase education, mental health, and emotional health services, and have an elected board that can hold our local police accountable.
Thank you, Kristen. Joshua.
Yes, I disagree with all the candidates. The role of police is law enforcement. The police enforce the law after the law has already been broken. Police do not factor or assist in the abatement of crime. The challenges facing our community is one of opportunity, one of high unemployment. Just 2 years ago, our city had some of the lowest crime levels that it's ever had in the entire country. And now we saw that COVID-19, which has thrown many New Yorkers out of work, has risen unemployment levels, has closed and shut down our small businesses. It's no coincidence this crime has increased. We need to combat gun violence in our communities with an overabundance of opportunities, such as expanding the summer youth employment program to make it year-round, to give year-round opportunities for job placement and career development for youth in our community. By getting our young people, particularly in our public housing, into apprenticeship programs so that they can get into union jobs and get on the fast track to the middle class. We need to pass a public banking system for our cities so that we can support our small businesses and give microloans to startups, to entrepreneurs who can create more jobs locally here in our community. We need to combat gun violence and crime with opportunity.
Thank you, Joshua. William.
Yes, Josh is wrong. I actually agree with him. It's really about equity. And that if you want to lower crime, you got to make sure that opportunity exists for those communities that for too long have been overlooked. I mean, we all know for a fact that the pipeline to prison is, you can look at certain zip codes in New York State, and you look at those zip codes, they're some of the poorest communities and neighborhoods in New York. And if the elementary schools and other programs were adequately funded, that pipeline can be cut off. There are so many people that eat off of poor people. There are so many people that eat us in these systems, and it's a known fact. Local precinct, I think, can probably do a better job if they're really funded to do community affairs and communication. The community boards, the community precinct councils, community council are not even funded. I mean, the Explorers Club in our community that could be a pipeline to young people into law enforcement doesn't even have a budget. The city council itself takes no responsibility often about the behavior of the police department. I think that there is a public safety committee in the city council that's supposed to provide oversight. It's basically absent. It's been absent. The state legislature is absent.
Thank you, William.
Why does the police department have so much power and we don't blame the right people for their actions?
Thank you.
William. Thank you, William. Just we're up against the clock. I appreciate your passion. Billy.
Well, for someone who has, endured gun violence in this community, being shot 6 times, left for dead in my building here in District 9, I understand the violence that's been taking place in our community. And then when you think about it, it's, that's a bigger issue. That's a mental health issue that we need to address that has not been being addressed in our community. And, and I agree with a lot of my colleagues. It's about education and it's about resources. When it comes down to the police, I just think that we need to hold the police accountable for the things that they do. But we also, the community got to make sure that, that we have the right representation on the precinct council to make sure that the commanders are and the lieutenants are coming out into the community and being part of the community and meeting some of these CBOs and, having relationships, right? That's some of the stuff that we need to do as a community to stop the police violence, right? So, we have to take accountability for it too. And I also believe that, officers need more training, more sensitivity training when it comes down to dealing with young people and people in our community.
Thank you, Ruth.
Well, as retired law enforcement, I agree with Jordan, believe it or not. They need better oversight. That's why I sit currently on the precinct council without pay. I mean, I hear people talking about what they do in the scope of their job, but what do you do for the community outside of your job? Now, when we look at law enforcement, we have to already know things are out of whack. That money has to go to our children in our communities. They need activities. They need structure. They need jobs. Like William said, explorers. I work with explorers regularly, and there's no money funded that way. What are these kids supposed to have in this community if the governing body oversees everything as a legal technicality? Everything for the children of color is perceived totally different than children of not color. Everything is a crime when it comes to them. And we have to speak to that. And we have to be able to tell the powers that be that we don't want it in our community and sit at the table. I keep telling people, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. How do we change that? You got to get there. You got to get there, and it can't be in the scope of your job. I'm tired of hearing about people's jobs. Let me hear what you're doing for this community on a regular basis outside of your job. I had a job. I could talk all day about my job and what I did in this community. Outside of my job, what are you doing for free in this community that's making a difference? That's what I need people to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. Sheba.
I'm tired of this.
Thank you for the question. Just like most of my colleagues, there has to be an understanding that prior to this pandemic, we were over-policed. Sitting on a board, you can sit on a board, but we're still encountering mass incarceration in our district. In my complex alone, last 2 weeks ago, we had a massive shootout. It is beyond just talking about it. We need to really put policy in place that holds police accountable for what they stand for. If you're going to be professional when you engage with the community, that is the only way bridges are built and not walls, because it's an ongoing crisis. And outside of my job, I am working with 2 different programs to, one, bring a radio station into our community to give our children an opportunity to express themselves through radio and their lived experiences, not only during the pandemic, but their overall life. And then I'm also working with the Sculptors Guild to bring up a art project that would, again, give our kids something to do. But there has to be a combination of accountability of the police, money being given to programs that serve for mental health services, as well as internships for our children, as well as art projects and technology. Our kids need places to go and have opportunities to thrive.
Thank you. And Mario.
you know, people in Harlem are concerned about, number one, being able to go outside and feel like you're not going to get hit upside the head. People in Harlem are concerned about being able to go outside and not necessarily get caught up in some type of incident of gun violence. People are concerned about being able to come home from work and buy a bottle of wine and not get jumped. And so these are real issues. But at the same time, people in Harlem are concerned about not getting pulled over by the police and being treated inappropriately. We need safety for everyone in Harlem. And it's no coincidence that coming on the heels of the greatest economic shutdown we have seen ever, that we've seen a rise in crime. 2 years ago, we saw some of the lowest rates of crime that we've seen in Harlem. And so what we need to do is focus on investing in opportunity for our young people, making sure the budget prioritizes aggressive and compassionate outreach to houseless people who are sleeping on our streets and getting them into supportive housing where they get the mental health resources they need. Policing cannot solve everything. But people in Harlem will tell you they want more police. What is it that we're getting with more police? And so I think more than anything right now, there's political consensus and awareness that we're gonna create a lasting approach to public safety. That's what I'm interested in. And frankly, that's what Harlem is interested in, because people are going through real things and we need solutions that are actually gonna tackle the problem in a sustainable way now. And policing isn't gonna be it in the long term. We gotta get to a point where policing isn't the center of the conversation around public safety in our neighborhood.
Thank you, Mario. And thank you, everyone. We're out of time right now, but I think that this was a very engaged conversation, and congratulations to you all on running campaigns in an effort not just to make your neighborhood better, but to make New York City better as a whole. So we have to close now. Stephen and I will be back in under 30 minutes for our District 10 debate. You could still sign up for that at PoliticsNY.com. Again, thank you all, and
Thank you.
good luck.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Night.
All right. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Stephen, let's talk on the new panel on the new screen. Perfect. He hung up on me.